My name is Oleg, and I am playing Man in a Covered Coat. To be honest, theater was always in my life, so it never came as a epiphany, like, "Oh, I love this." It's something I picked up when I was a kid. I performed because it's fun. You dress up as a different animal or a character, and just you go into this fantasy world. So it's always been alongside, so to speak. Although it's never been, oh, this is something I want to do. Just nature was in my life in one way or another. So unfortunately, there is no particular moment that I would like to share. Oh, this is thing for me. So just like this play, just sort of came along. So I just decided to jump on it. Well, first when I read the ad about the auditions, I thought the premise sounded interesting. There were people that were involved in it that I knew from before, and I knew their experience, so I knew I was in the good hands, and it's gonna be an exciting thing. Because at that particular time, I just finished my previous play, and I was kind of in wonder, what should I do next? Should I wait? And that thing sort of came along quite in a good timing. I think characters, when I read the script, there was a lot of rich and interesting and dynamic characters, and it's an ensemble play, and I love ensemble plays, especially in theater, because it allows to sort of different, actors to sort of try to work out in some sort of a unison. So it's kind of nice because you get to sort of feed off each other's energy. So plus the setup, Moscow train, all this sort of funny little quirky characters. It's a little fantasy in there as well, so you don't really know what is real, what is not. It makes a good sort of, kind of recipe for, I want to try that. Oh, it's called Tears. Yeah, I'm playing one of the traits of the main lead's subconscious, so to speak. So, and that was quite challenging because you had to portray some sort of a personality of the whole. So it's just a part of a bigger character. So there's a challenge of how it manifests itself on stage, the subconscious part of, you know, our identity, which has always been a very interesting topic for me. Because I do believe we all have sort of different masks when we're around certain people. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's cool. So I enjoyed the process of that. This is well, now when I think about it, it's sort of similar, but it's not as self-explanatory. It's only later on when I started to dig deeper in analyzing the whole play, I understood. Oh, it's actually there's a parts of it which very similar to. Well, the way it differs is the tone of it. It deals with a completely different topic, and it also, we have our stories too. Even though maybe there's a sort of idea that we might be parts of the main characters, subconscious or reality that he created, but we still have our own stories, and it comes out in the monologues that we have. So, and that's different compared to Tears, where it just, okay, we know we're in her, which is there to sort of witness what's happening. I'm playing a very eccentric, hedonistic, cynical, in my interpretation of it, man in a covered coat. There is no name for him, and there's probably a reason for why he wears a covered coat. I kind of think that he's the kind of guy he strikes me as a very cynical, but with a sense of humor. It's not like he's very negative. He has his moments, and I think he sort of, how they say, cynical person, someone who was looking for meaning and failed to find one. I think that's sort of what Man in Covered Coat is that losing that sort of losing, like not being able to find that meaning deeper meaning, he went back, so he became very impulsive, drinking, women specifically. There's a particular scene which actually tells the story of deception, and that's actually, and he says this is better. There's a need for this kind of thing. But I understand him. I don't particularly agree, but I understand where that comes from because I can relate to it. Well, I first time I just read the story and just try to take it in, try to get the tone and the sense of the mood of it. And then slowly as the process of rehearsal starts and I try to break down the monologues and the lines they have and see how that person reacts to the situation, what is his response to certain questions, how he reacts. And it's sort of kind of like a little puzzle that it's I draw inspirations from pretty much particular things. Like if I look for a walk, I kind of like out there and kind of like it's subconscious. I just looking for a walk. What kind of, how does he walk? And then if you see someone in the metro, like yeah, that's it. Or if like I pick up someone from like a TV show or a film or it's or a book I read. It's like this little pieces. It's like, oh, he could talk like that. So it's not just one thing. Like Man in a Covered Coat made me think of this Chekhov short story called Человек в футляре. I don't know how to explain how to uh, translate it, but it's about this man who's always like kind of like hidden. He wears black glass. He has a black hat and a coat, so he kind of like very hidden. So I kind of like imagine him that some part of his character could be, used for this. So it's usually like a little puzzle thing that I keep going, like subconscious, not intentional. Sometimes it is. You just, kind of like always on outlook for a particular thing, walks, talks, and reaction, body language, things like that. So it's pretty much from everything, really. I guess one of my favorite actors is Toshiro Mifune, which is a Japanese actor. He's been in a lot of Kurosawa's films, and he is actually embodiment of how a physical actor should be. Because there's different films, when he is in the Seven Samurais, his body language is very different because he's kind of like this nomadic, crazy person, and the way he sort of physically embodies that, character is just fantastic. Then you see him in The Bodyguard. He kind of like this Clint Eastwood's Western films were a lot, kind of based on Kurosawa's earlier films, So he kind of like walk in his kimono and kind of like does this shoulder thing, and you recognize he does that little thing, physical thing, which kind of that's him, and you don't have to do anything else. He just does that little piece. And then there's a High and Low, which is a detective story. He plays a much older, millionaire who, and there he's very static. He has to be the stoic character. So it's like he has a very wide, set of tools that he uses. So he never plays the same character. So it's a lot of like he's very inspiring in that sense. The story is very kind of like metaphoric. It's there's a train, there's these characters, and they talk about thing, and it's sort of real, but it's not, and it's very sort of fused and blurred. There's a lot of small interactions among the characters, and I think it's kind of like sort of characters spilling their guts out in a way. They tell their sort of story. We get a glimpse of their personality, which is kind of funny because when you take a public transport, people are usually quiet. There are very few people that talk, and usually when they talk, it's more of a trivial things. But this is kind of like when I imagine if I was on a train and I got to know all these people, what would they say? So it's kind of like inside of what their life is like beyond the facade, So, and that's I think comes out in stories. To me personally, it's like conversations among each other, and like getting to know each other, and like showing ourselves vulnerable for each other. And there is no judgment either. Sometimes there's a jokes and stuff, but there's no particular judgment. Oh, you're a bad person because of that. They sort of accept that. So it's something I respect. Reading this is getting to the mind of this writer. Things that he finds regretful, things that he aspires to, things he loved once, things he's tried to hold on to. There's like a mismatch of like so many different things that he wants to bring out, and we as characters has to be a part of it. So I think I took Man in a Covered Coat as in a way that his cynical side. That's how I looked at it. I'm representing that part of trying to find meaning in this crazy world and failing. So in doing so, I become impulsive, cynical, hedonistic. I just gonna use all the, enjoy all the pleasure and just, disregard everything of value, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's really like, I'd say you should read the story in order to understand who he is, because that's what's essential. What he's done and those facts, he went to school there, and that's like sort of meaningless in a way. Those are just things, really. This is what's more, gonna give more of who he is as a personality and things he finds important. And then, the theater school he went to, and where he's studying, things like that. Chekhov. So hands down, Chekhov. I read a lot of him. I reread it, and mostly it's one of the reasons I wanted to be a part of this play is because once I get this ensemble, and in this show and this play, it's about there's a lot of things. There are different characters who have different wants and needs and desires and regrets, and there's like always leads to this climatic scene when someone just everything just explodes and comes out and becomes sometimes to the point of being very ugly, like you don't want to see it, but you kind of know what it feels to not being able to fully express yourself. And Chekhov deals with a lot of these topics, people who kind of like plateaued in life and kind of like can't find a useful or meaningful, valuable thing to hold on to. It's like, oh, this is what I want this, and like, should I go to Moscow? Maybe that's where things are. But the reality is because they're too afraid to take chances and leave the comfort zone. So they just end up, being this sort of evil circle. We just go on the walks, have a cup of tea, talk about some pseudo-intellectual things, and feel like they are somehow better than others. But then this vulnerable side of them that strives for more than just that comfort I find much more interesting to look at. And it's so hands down, he's one of my favorite playwrights. Russians are very straightforward. They're very honest in their expression. They say what they think, and sometimes it's not. You might not like it, but it is at least genuine. It's something that I value, especially in the Western society, where there's a lot of sort of trying to be diplomatic and not to offend anyone. Like, like a Russian woman comes out like, "You're a douchebag," and she means it. And you go, "Okay, cool. At least she's telling me the truth. She gives it as it is." But also there is a sense of community. I think it's still there in a way, because sometimes you run into someone from the same area or culture. It's like there's a lot of baggage that you don't have to explain. It's like you like, for example, for a New Year's Eve, we watch this Ironia Судьбы, and I don't have to explain the film, and that's it. And people are like, oh, I know it, so that's nice. Challenging. I think there's I would just stay with word challenging because there's a lot of notion of the world and yourself that you will kind of ask yourself, because as the story will progress, there's a lot of questions that being posed, not like out there, but they will grow naturally. You know, it's like if I was in this kind of train with this kind of characters, what would I do? You know, would I go along? Would I oppose? And then it's like, how about my life? Am I agreeing with this person, or should I, you know, go with the main lead? And it's like, why is he not doing that? So there's a lot of questions, like kind of like makes you sometimes angry. It's like, this is, why don't you just do that? So it will challenge your values, I think. Toothless Constance. It's a broken down woman that I like. There's so many similar Russian characters that I can say, like, she's like exactly the embodiment of this kind of typical woman. You know, she's seen it all, and she's tough, and she doesn't give a shit about things. You know, and but there is this, you gotta respect that. You know, it's kind of like it's motivating, it's inspiring actually, because you know she's been through a lot of crap, but she's just like holds on to it, like, you know, she just trotting on because like that's the way she is, you know. So it's kind of cool. I like that. I think it's very interesting because a lot of people from the cast that come from so many different cultural backgrounds, first of all, and they have come with their own, you know, experience. You know, we have different levels. You know, we have Scott, who's been in theater since he was pretty much born. You know, obviously we got you. We got new stars, but they bring this, you know, young energy, and they're like, I'm just starting, and this is so exciting. So it's kind of cool to see that, like someone who comes like still with this like, I want to learn new things, and it sort of catches on. And then you have someone like Scott and you and Levin, who been experienced with theater for a very long time. They're more come with this sort of this wisdom. They will sort of break it down, explain it to you, and just watching them is like watching Scott is like watching a professional player, you know, play. You go like, oh, you can learn so many tricks from this guy, you know. So it's an interesting mix, and everybody very supportive, and I think we have a pretty good managed to bond if in such a short, you know, span of time, and it goes along. I think there's this good balance between, you know, different experience. Yeah, he's a very hands-on kind of director. He likes to be what do you call it? He likes to make sure that you understand it, which is something I value. Oh, he's very meticulous, and you know he knows what he wants, but he doesn't suffocate you, which is a good thing, because it's hard to find that balance between something you imagine and something that we as actors evolve and develop ourselves, because we don't want to be restricted. Oh, you go here and then you take 3 steps and then you go back, and no more, no less. You can't do this, you can't do this. He will obviously say, like, I prefer not to do that, but you're welcome to try this on. So it's hands on, but it's also very playful. And he tries different techniques as well, which is very interesting, with like the session we had a couple like last week, where we had to like go deeper into ourselves. That's something which is new to me, at least. Usually the worst the least things I require from each player is that they leave with something. It's almost worse for me when people can't have an opinion on the play at all. Like, it can be anything. They can hate it, they can love it, but it has to be something that they can take away with them and discuss. But what I took personally from the play is this sort of questioning your being in a way, because you will recognize part of yourself in the play, because there's a little for everybody. some things you agree on, something you don't agree, but then it's kind of like leads to the main sort of more sort of bigger existential questions, like, am I doing the right thing, doing what I'm doing currently? And that's what I think theater should do, is to challenge your notion of things you think is right and wrong and things like that, because it's very sort of gray. We represent this gray zone of, human moral. It's like, and you kind of like, oh, I feel this is uncomfortable, but I do believe in that. So the least I can ask for from each, you know, person in the audience, that it at least takes something out of it. It can be anything. It could be a positive or negative thing, but should hopefully it's not nothing. They come, they see, and they go home, and that would be it. I auditioned for two characters. I auditioned for Man in the Covered Coat, and I auditioned for a grandkid. Well, grandkid to me is a very interesting character because I think he has like two lines in the entire thing, but there is, I don't know, it's probably the most challenging part because you have no line, but you still have to be present, and you still have to be a part of it. He's not just like a wall, like just there in the background. You still have to be present. And just because you have two lines, there's going to be more attention towards you because, oh, he's about to say something. And the things he says, has to be delivered with such a perfection in a way, because now I have this one particular thing and I have to deliver it perfectly. So he might not think that it's more like very challenging, but when I read the scripts, like, this is the most challenging. He physically has to be there all the time. He can't just relax because people will see that, So yeah, but to say the least, like, all the other characters are dramatic and interesting, but I thought the grandkid would be the second choice for me. I'm very excited. Yeah, I'm actually I'm looking forward to it. I started working on the play by listening to a lot of Russian music, and so, like, start rereading. Actually, I started rereading Chekhov just because there are some characters I find I can be useful. So I know I'm super excited. It's gonna be fun. Like, I think a lot of other cast members are also excited about this play too.